Hello students, I welcome you all today to this session on foreign policy of India and the principles of non-alignment and panchsheel. Let us first understand what is foreign policy. Foreign policy reflects the goals that a nation is trying to achieve as well as the means that are being adopted for securing these. International politics is basically a process of interactions among the foreign policies of all nations, particularly the foreign policies of major powers of the world. Like the foreign policy of every other country, foreign policy of India also stands determined by a number of factors or components. It has been the result of the interplay of a large number of factors that have always affected its formulations in different ways and in different circumstances. These are sometimes referred as elements or inputs or determinants of foreign policy. It is foreign policy which establishes diplomatic, economic, trade, educational, cultural and political relations and interactions with other nations. For giving meaning and directions to its behavior in the international environment, each state adopts a set of principles, a rational guide and a plan of action, a foreign policy. Today in this session, we will discuss the objectives of Indian foreign policy in general and non-alignment and panchsheel in particular. It is customary when we are talking about foreign policy to begin a study of foreign policy of India by discussing its main principles. Ever since her independence, Indian foreign policy has been one of the building bridges of friendship and cooperation with all countries regardless of their economic and political systems. It has always tried to secure India's national interest as well as to promote international peace and security, to maintain just and honorable relations among nations and to foster respect for international law and treaty obligations. For securing these objectives, the conduct of India's foreign relations has been governed by several clear-cut principles and objectives. Now, we will see the principles of India's foreign policy. Non-alignment has been the first important principle of Indian foreign policy, then opposition to imperialism, colonialism, neo-colonialism, hegemony, dominance and unipolarism. Next, opposition to racial discrimination and ethnic violence, opposition to discriminatory international regimes and policies, purity of means, panchsheel and support for the United Nations, world peace and reforms in the UN system, solidarity with the third world, use of high level economic diplomacy for securing India's rightful place in the emerging world order of 21st century, and friendship with all, particularly with the neighboring countries. Independent foreign policy based upon national interest of India, support for disarmament, particularly nuclear disarmament and arms control, independent nuclear policy, commitment to fight the forces of terrorism and full cooperation for overcoming all international problems, global economic recession problems being posed by environment pollution and climate change, and the problems of securing the human rights of all the people of the world. Now, we will see the principle of non-alignment in detail. The principle that has come to be regarded as the most silent feature of Indian foreign policy has been non-alignment. Under the leadership of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, Nasser, Tito and the dedicated work done by several other leaders of the non-aligned countries, non-alignment developed into an international movement. At a time when the two superpowers, America and USSR, were committed to the policy of Cold War and security alliances with other nations as the means to build up their respective position in Cold War, the Indian policymakers thought it fit, both in the interest of world peace and India's security needs, to keep India away from the Cold War, military alliances and power politics. Originally, this policy of keeping away from Cold War was variously named as neutrality in Cold War or neutralism, but in the early 50s it came to be known as non-alignment. The principle of neither committing the nation to either of the two power blocks through an alliance nor remaining away from the international relations. The formal launching of NAM took place in 1961 when the first summit of non-aligned countries was held at Belgrade, and it was attended by 25 Afro-Asian and 1 European state. Positively speaking, non-alignment stands defined as an independent foreign policy, active participation in international relations, judging each issue on merits and taking decisions on the basis of the merits of the case and the national interest of India. Negatively, it stands for keeping aloof from Cold War, alliances and power politics. It is neither isolation or indifference and nor even involvement in power rivalry. While adopting non-alignment, Nehru justified it as essentially a principle of world peace and of independent foreign policy based upon self-respect and national interest. He felt, and very rightly so, that involvement or alignment with any one bloc or superpower would strengthen the Cold War and endanger world peace. It will limit India's ability to work for world peace, friendship and cooperation with all. Alignment would limit India's freedom to express her opinion freely on international issues and problems. Even in the post-Cold War period of international relations and the consequent changes in the international order, India continued to follow non-alignment. It was seen as the principle of independence in international relations and as a vital means for increasing bonds of friendship and cooperation with all the other countries. NAM has within its fold 118 members and India enjoys a place of leadership among them. India continues to posit faith in non-alignment. The BJP NDA government, which remained in power from October 1999 to May 2004, the Congress-led UPA government, which remained in power from May 2004 to May 2014 under Dr. Manmohan Singh, regularly repeated their commitment to follow non-alignment. NAM continues to be the need of the 21st century. It is needed for securing a new world order based on equality, justice, freedom and development. It has not been only a movement against Cold War and alliance politics, it has also been a positive movement for the unity of the new states or the third world. Ever since its origin in the early years of the Indian independence, non-alignment has been an object of severe criticism. The critics, both at home and abroad, have criticized it as a policy based on idealism and have expressed doubts about its operational ability as a principle of the Indian foreign policy. Some critics have not hesitated both to denounce it as a policy of positivity and inaction, as well as to level the charge that in the name of non-alignment, India has been keen to remain away from key issues of international relations. Further, whereas some of its many Western critics still describe it as a policy of undesirable neutrality. Others continue to criticize it as a policy of double alignment or opportunistic alignment. But it must be noted that NAM has been a movement against apartheid, armament race, nuclear weapons, international terrorism, cross-border terrorism and forces of totalitarianism, authoritarianism and unilateralism. Though some progress in controlling these evils have been achieved, the battle against these is yet to be won. NAM is needed for securing united and strong global level efforts for meeting the menace of international terrorism. And it is to be noted that NAM has potentials to help nations to be an active and alert international actor. It can act as a guide and facilitator and help the developing countries to secure their interests and needs. India fully accepts the relevance of NAM in contemporary international relations. The NAM summits held till date have fully exhibited the resolve of the member countries to keep up and strengthen NAM as a group of countries which stands united to oppose the forces of terrorism, neocolonialism, unilateralism, hegemony, dominance and intervention. The non-aligned movement has rightly asserted its continued relevance and demonstrated its determination to uphold its objectivity, that is, to oppose and struggle against injustice, inequality, terrorism and underdevelopment. It claims to be a movement committed to work for the removal of economic inequalities between the developed and the developing countries. There are a number of tasks before NAM for NAM to continue. It must continue to act for securing these goals in the years to come. Since NAM was a product of the Cold War scenario and the bipolar world, many scholars have questioned the relevance of NAM after the end of the Cold War and the demise of the Soviet Union. However, even in the present scenario, NAM has a significant role to play. First, with the disintegration of Soviet Union, the world faces threat from unipolar world. The NAM can act as a check against the US dominance. Secondly, the developed North states and the developing South states are divided over several economic issues. The NAM remains a very relevant forum for third world countries to engage the developed nation in a productive dialogue. Moreover, the NAM can prove to be a powerful instrument for South-South cooperation. Such a thing is essential if the third world countries are to increase their bargaining power vis-a-vis the developed world. India continues to take active part in the non-aligned movement even after the end of the Cold War. Finally, the developing countries united under the forum of NAM have to fight for the reform of UN and change it according to the requirement of the 21st century. Now, let us see what are the various principles of panchsheel. Panchsheel is the principled core of the non-aligned movement. Down the years, the ethos of panchsheel continued to be reflected in world events, even if there was no conscious attributions, finding expression in the position of the developing countries in the North-South dialogue and in other groupings. The timeless relevance of panchsheel is based on its firm roots in the cultural traditions of its originators, the two world's most ancient civilization. The linkage that was established by the spread of Buddhism in China laid the historical basis for the formulation of the principles of panchsheel by India and China. Indeed, panchsheel is an important instrument designed to secure peaceful relations among nations on the basis of faith in peaceful coexistence and non-interference. It has been a fundamental principle of Indian foreign policy. It is the Indian Charter of healthy, peaceful and cooperative relations with the other nations of the world, because it rests on equality and rules out aggressions and internal interferences. The term Funchal is a composite of two Sanskrit terms, Panch meaning 5 and Sheel meaning code of behavior or conduct. As such, it means 5 principles of code of conduct. Panchal stands for 5 principles which are designed to guide the mutual relations among the nations. These principles were first enunciated in a specific form in the Sino-Indian Treaty on Tibet in April 1954 and were restated in the joint declaration issued by Nehru and Chu En-lai at the end of the visit of Chinese leaders to India in June 1954. The 5 principles of Panchsheel are: first, mutual respect for each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty; second, mutual non-aggression; third, mutual non-interference; fourth, equality and mutual benefit; and the last, peaceful coexistence. The philosophical basis of these ideas was provided by the 5 principles of conduct which Mahatma Buddha had laid down for his disciples, as well as 5 principles which Indonesia have adopted in 1945 as a basis for its foreign policy. These principles were: faith in our people, that means nationalism; faith in humanity; faith in freedom; faith in social justice; and faith in God. Panchal became the presiding principle of the Asian African countries for equality and freedom against the prevailing colonial and imperialist domination of the world. The United Nations accepted the 5 principles as a code of conduct in international relations and the aims of the United Nations. In India, it was under Nehru's influence that the 5 principles of peace, peaceful coexistence, non-interference, healthy friendship and cooperation were formulated into the concept of Panchsheel. The first principle, that is, mutual respect for each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty, rules out the territorial and economic imperialism and interferences in internal affairs of other nation. Positively, it stands for the right of each nation to act independently and secure its integrity as a nation. The second principle commits the nation to the use of peaceful means for making one's decision or interest acceptable to the other nation. The third principle admits the right of each nation to manage its internal affairs freely, and it rules out external interferences in the domestic affairs of any other country. Non-interference in internal affairs of other nation is accepted as a means of peace and as an anti-tension, anti-war principle. The fourth principle stresses equality of nations and fruitful and mutually beneficial relations among them all. Each state, whether big or small, is equal with every other state and has the equal right to conduct its foreign relations with the others on the basis of equality and mutual benefits. The fifth principle admits peaceful coexistence as the ideal and natural condition and principle of international living. It admits that in spite of socio-economic differences in the political system that are at work in various states, the states can peacefully coexist and develop friendship and cooperation. This principle of peaceful coexistence and not the Cold War principle of domination, tension building and attempts at isolating the states with different ideological and political systems can lead to peace and development. Peaceful coexistence and not Cold War and power politics constitute the correct, natural, healthy and efficient approach to peace, security, prosperity and the progress of the world. Panchal is a principle of peace through peaceful coexistence and non-interference. It constitutes an ideal means for development of healthy, friendly and cooperative relations among the nations. After the acceptance of Panchal by India and China, several other nations came forward to accept it. In October 1954, Vietnam and in December 1954, Yugoslavia accepted it. In 1955, this principle was accepted by Myanmar, that means Burma, then by Laos, Nepal and Cambodia. The non-official Asian Relations Conference in New Delhi, which was held in 1955 April, they have also accepted or adopted the Panchal principles. But its biggest success came when the first Afro-Asian Conference, which was held at Bandung and accepted Panchal and even extended it to include some other principles. Australia, Austria, Poland also came forward to accept Panchal. Thus, within a short period, Panchal came to receive a good and favorable response and it earned an international recognition. In 1957, even the Soviet leader Khrushchev decided to support peaceful coexistence among all nations. Globalization should not become the worldwide manifestation of the highest and subtlest form of capitalism, but as Mahatma Gandhi envisaged, a federation of friendly, interdependent nations where no one dominates or exploits another. The appropriate code of conduct for a globalized world would be the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence and not the overlordship of one superpower or group of nations. The United Nations should be at the core of this world order. Any intervention for the sake of human rights or democracy should be by the United Nations or by the express approval of the United Nations. One of the major issues today is defending the pluralistic world order where nations can evolve, grow and prosper according to their own genius. Jawaharlal Nehru observed in 1950s that it should be open to each country to develop in its own way, learning from others and not imposed by them. Essentially, this calls for a new mental approach. The Panchal and the 5 principles offered that approach. Today, we have to generate that mental approach which Panchal put forth so refreshingly during the 1950s, the golden years of Sino-Indian relations. It was said by Zhou Enlai that as the originator of Panchal, it is our duty to make this doctrine shine over the whole world for our mutual benefit, for peace, friendship and cooperation among nations. India firmly believes in peaceful coexistence, self-reliance, cooperation, non-alignment, support for decolonization, disarmament, removal of inequalities among the nations and global struggle against apartheid and racialism. The basic objective of the policy is to preserve India's freedom of opinion and decision making in a world full of rivalry among powerful nations for supremacy and dominance. Having undergone some of the worst experiences of foreign rule and imperialism, India has always supported the cause of freedom and struggle against discrimination, whether racial, economic or political. India extended its full support to Indonesia in its struggle for independence. In the 1950s, during the Korean crisis, India bluntly refused to take sides and remain neutral while calling for a peaceful solution. Similarly, in 1956, when Suez Canal crisis threatened world peace in the wake of British, French, Israel aggression on Egypt, India played a constructive role by condemning the attack and urged its immediate termination. India's contribution to maintain peace and avoid conflict can also be seen in its full support to the United Nations in its peacekeeping measures. Indian diplomats and military personnel have been participating in the world body's peacekeeping operations in various troubled parts of the world like Congo, Lebanon, Cyprus, Yugoslavia, Cambodia and Somalia. India has also been instrumental in transforming the British Commonwealth into the present Commonwealth. Among the member countries, India always pleaded the case of South African people and played a key role for rallying opinion against apartheid and the minority white regime, which was since been voted out of power. Similarly, India's role as a leading member of the non-aligned movement, that means NAM, has been very positive and constructive in major international issues. Through this organization, India has always supported acceleration of the struggle against colonialism, economics of domination, discrimination against the poor and developing countries by the developed and the rich countries. During the 10th NAM summit held in September 1992 at Jakarta, India urged the member countries to give the highest priority to such issues as nuclear disarmament, elimination of the last vestiges of colonialism, eradication of poverty and accelerated economic development of the South-based countries. India also welcomed the end of the so-called Cold War in the wake of the détente between the two superpowers. At the same time, however, it is aware that their contribution to global disarmament is almost nil and has therefore refused to sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty (NPT) in 1968. India has opposed the NPT because it is discriminatory and against the interest of developing countries. India wants the superpowers of the world to not only stop producing nuclear weapons, but to also destroy the existing ones. Further, China should also be brought to the negotiating table and there should be significant reduction in the defense budgets of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. India is against discrimination in any form. India also insists that instead of bilateral negotiations, all disarmament negotiations should be held under the auspices of UN to make them transparent, fair, universal and non-discriminatory. India's prestige has been ever on the increase because of its independent foreign policy based on non-alignment. India believes in settlement of all the issues by peaceful means across the table and through talks and negotiations. India wants to maintain peaceful and friendly relations with Pakistan and settle all major issues, including that of Jammu Kashmir, through talks and negotiations according to the Simla Agreement. India wants peaceful and friendly relations with Pakistan in spite of the latter's belligerent mood, aggressive postures and support to terrorist activities in Jammu Kashmir. India firmly believes in cooperation, the principle of live and let live, and normalization of relation among all nations of the world. India wants the nuclear energy to be used for peaceful purposes only, and it has been practicing what it has been preaching. India also supports the Non-Proliferation Treaty, provided it is not biased and partial. India has made special efforts to improve its relation with neighboring countries. Consequently, today India's relation with China, Sri Lanka, Nepal have been very cordial, healthy and purposeful. There has been an exchange of many visits and several treaties and pacts for economic development, industrial growth and cultural exchanges have been signed. By and large, India's foreign policy has been successful in protecting its image as a peace-loving, non-aligned country, an emerging power dedicated to world peace and prosperity. Now, I would like to conclude this session. Today, we learnt about the principles of foreign policy of India and also about the importance of non-alignment and panchsheel. I believe that it will help you to understand the broad framework of India's foreign policy. Thank you.